So what is positive cash flow? When you rent out the unit, you receive rental minus your expenses like your mortgage, property tax, as well as management fees and some other small expenses. The remaining amount that you have is called your positive cash flow. In this video, we're going to share with you the 4th criteria for choosing a good investable grade industrial property. And if you missed our earlier videos where we went through the first 3 criteria, feel free to check them out in the link in the description. So everyone, hi, I'm Jermaine.
I'm Sean.
And this is Bailey. He's actually our office security. And so yeah, we are the founders of Quadrant. In this series of videos, we'll be sharing with you guys property investment knowledge, strategies, and tips. So today, one of the 5 criteria that we're going to talk about is positive cash flow. So what is positive cash flow? When you rent out the unit, you receive rental minus your expenses like your mortgage, property tax, as well as management fees and some other small expenses. The remaining amount that you have is called your positive cash flow.
So remember guys, positive cash flow is net of expenses and we do not want to look at the rental as like a passive income. So remember, always deduct out these expenses so that you have a true figure in terms of what is really a positive cash flow.
Now Sean, I think buying is very easy, right? You just buy a property, but the key thing is in holding the property, don't you think so?
Yeah, so I mean, to build property investments on a long-term basis, you want to ensure that we have a strong enough holding power, because the last thing you want to do to scale up your portfolio, have multiple properties that are giving a negative cash flow, and that will end up in terms of when there's crisis or there's a loss of job or in any scenario, that's where we are forced to actually sell it at an undesirable price point.
Absolutely right. Imagine buying a property, right? Every single month is not making you money. It's actually losing you money every single month. In certain cases where, like, let's say you have a retirement or like coming, or like, you know, you have a retrenchment, you may not be able to pay the mortgage, and that is where it brings us to one of the most important points, which is called holding power for you to tide through certain situations as well.
So with this, with a higher positive cash flow on multiple units, that just gives you a stronger holding power as an overall portfolio and gives you an easier time to scale up your entire investment journey. Now, other than giving you holding power, I think one of the main key things is that we must understand that you're going to invest into an industrial property. Industrial property ultimately have this thing called a lower leasehold as compared to many other asset classes.
Correct. And if you guys have actually missed out our other criteria, which is called tenure, you can catch our other videos as well.
Therefore, we do not buy industrial property assuming that there's going to be a capital appreciation. Right now, we've got to take into account a case scenario where basically we are unable to exit or unable to sell. This means that the only profit that you're going to get is positive cash flow, or basically the cash flow. Right? You're not going to get principal, you're not going to get capital appreciation because we are not exiting this particular property. Now, if that scenario comes to play, then at least we are able to still profit off this positive cash flow that's coming into your pocket every single month.
So let's take our unit as an example. We bought this unit at $745K and we received a positive cash flow of $1,000. Now, bearing in mind, this has actually deducted off all expenses like the mortgage, the management fees, as well as the property tax, and with a positive cash flow, this has helped us in our holding power. Guys, let's wonder and imagine over here for a second. If Sean, anyway, we managed to sell off this property, but Sean, if let's say we didn't manage to sell off this property, what do you think would happen to us?
We actually put in about 20% down payment. Let's assume in today's context, 20% down payment is necessary. So if a 20% down payment plus stamp duty plus maybe there's a $5,000 budget for renovation, we're probably putting in like $175K. So if a $1,000 cash flow means that we have about $12,000 a year. So to take back your original capital, that will probably take you about 14 to 15 years just to take back your capital. Now, do take note of this. After 30 years, your mortgage will have been fully paid by the tenant, but because, right, in this scenario, we are not going to sell off the property. Therefore, your profit is still only cash flow. But the last, assuming this is a 37 years leasehold, your last 7 years will have been the full rental as your cash flow itself.
And by the way, we are under the assumption that we never ever get to increase rental for all 37 years from a $2 per square foot, which is quite rare in Singapore, I would say. And if you missed our videos earlier where we talked about occupancy rates, how to get our units rented out all the time, adding value into those, you can can catch our other videos as well.
Imagine this, you take 15 years to take back your capital, you have another 15 years of positive cash flow, alright, plus a 7 years worth of full rental minus MCST minus tax as a cash flow. With this, pretty much you would have double to triple up your cash itself, and that will give you a return of around 5 to 6% per year. Now in summary, let's assume a few factors over here. If there is a rental increment, you're probably going to 3x your money. Right? If there's no rental increment, right, you're probably going to 2x your money, which means that divided over 37 years holding period, that will probably give you about 5 to 6+% returns per year.
So of course guys, if you fully pay for the property, you're of course going to get a positive cash flow. So in the case of our investor criteria, right, we want to make sure that when we buy an industrial property, we minimally have a positive cash flow with an 80% financing, because that is what most industrial property financing is anyway.
Yeah, and for those people who are thinking, hey, I don't want to look positive cash flow as like a profit, you can also look at it in a perspective of safety net. In our scenario, once again, with a $1,000 positive cash flow, if you secure a 2 years tenancy contract, that will give you pretty much a $24,000 in terms of positive cash flow. And that gives you a safety net of about close to a year worth of mortgage in case you're unable to rent it out for the next 1 year.
So in summary, while it seems really nice that positive cash flow gives a good passive income, but it does more than just that, and it has more advantages. So number one, it actually gives us holding power. So every month when you receive a positive cash flow, you don't have to sell off the property suddenly at an undesirable pricing. And number two is actually called safety net. So because you collected all these additional passive income, if let's say for whichever reason your unit cannot rent out for 1 or 2 months, at least during that vacant period, you have the safety net and you know that you actually have this amount to actually tide you through over.
And lastly, assuming that we are unable to sell the property, you're still going to get a decent 5 to 6% return that's easily outbeat inflation.
And that is why positive cash flow is one of the 5 criteria that is very important when we want to look at an investable grade industrial property.
Now, do remember that the biggest profit in property investment is actually on principal, alright, and of course sometimes capital appreciation. So we want to cover our downside on cash flow, alright, but do not put an overemphasis when it comes to positive cash flow, because remember guys, 100% fully paid property is always a positive cash flow. So this is just one out of the whole 5 criteria that we talk about.
So that's it guys. Today we talked about the one very important criteria, which is called positive cash flow out of the 5 criteria. And next week we are actually going to talk about the last criteria out of all the 5 criteria. So that's it from us at the Quadrant, and we hope you enjoyed our videos today. It was tuning in to Jermaine, Sean and Bailey.